Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. Those things apply as well because, well, you may be watching from somewhere else, and we want to welcome you in today. If you have never seen me before, maybe you're just scrolling by, my name is Paul Turner from thediscipleproject.net, and I have dubbed September Streamtember, where I will go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 Central Standard Time to answer your questions about youth ministry, because youth ministry is important. More than that, youth pastors are important. And so that's why I want to be able to answer these questions so that you as a youth pastor, especially if you're a new youth pastor, won't become disillusioned. I mean, I can't prevent that really. I can support you, but I'm just tired of hearing stories about youth pastors who are disillusioned with their job. They're disillusioned with the church. They're disillusioned with all these things. They don't know how the church works. They thought it was going to be one thing, then it's another. And so I answer these questions so that I can help support youth pastors. I want to keep youth pastors motivated and keep their youth ministries moving forward because I want them to stay in youth ministry for as long as they want to be. I want to keep you in youth ministry as long as you want to be. But so many youth pastors, just bail. And nothing, no shade on them. They may have been just not ready. They may have not learn some things in school. They may have, all kinds of issues. But the purpose of these streams is simply to say, listen, I want to answer your questions about youth ministry so I can keep you in it longer, so you can keep preaching the gospel, so you can fulfill the calling God's put on your life. Now, how do I know this? Well, I have been a youth pastor for over 35 years. And I've learned a thing or two, as the commercial says, because I have failed quite a bit. And so I bring to you today a plethora of experience, probably more failing than success. But I think I like to learn. I think that I've learned and been successful because of my failures. So I bring that to you today. But I want to welcome you in. I want to thank you for being here today. If you are looking for youth ministry resources, those kind of things, you can always go to my website, thediscipleproject.net. I'll put a link here in the chat here in a minute. And if you are wanting to ask a question, feel free. Ask a question in the chat. If you have a youth ministry question, would love to answer that question for you. I'm going to be talking about 3 questions today with a focus on, my last question is going to cover, what does it mean to work in a church and how do you survive the system, right? That's really what it's about. You got to survive the system, and every church is a system. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But if you are interested in my website, you're interested in what I do, I have a podcast, I have a blog, I got all the things, I got a store. And so I want to make sure I pass that on to you if I can. You can always visit the site, and I'll drop a link right here in the chat. And you can check it out for yourself, but welcome in. Thank you for being here. Let's see here. Put that there. All right. And by the way, let me know when you jump in here where you're from. If you're watching this later on, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from. Would love to connect with you and converse with you down in the comments. So today, first question, we're going to go ahead and jump into it. The first question is, how do you handle youth group discipline without making parents, students mad? Well, you're not. Let me just be, let me be blunt. Anytime discipline, there are best outcomes. There are no perfect outcomes, I would say, because, somebody's going to walk away, the loser, if you want to say that, because you're going to have to, have discipline in your room. Because if you don't have discipline in your room, guess what? You're not going to have very much success because you're always going to be correcting problems. And this is what teachers go through all the time, right? Teachers in public school systems, always feel like they're having to correct. They have to, corral their class. They have to focus on discipline and not focus on teaching. Well, we don't want that to be true of youth ministry, right? It's not the public school system, but, it can be rough at times, right? If you don't have things in place, if you don't have proper protocols, if you don't have proper things in place to help you, well, then yes, discipline's going to be a problem. And it could be that maybe you're not a very disciplinary person, right? You don't like to discipline. You don't like to correct. You may be a people pleaser. I understand. I am probably the opposite of that, where I don't mind, breaking a few eggs to make a cake. Because I think youth group goes a certain way. And, when I'm in charge, I'm in charge. But I also try to spread that out, right? It's not totally focused in on me. I try to spread the authority out. I'm not the singular authority figure in the room, but I have, right now I am, but in previous youth ministries, I've always had a team of leaders. In this particular, I'm currently serving as a part-time youth pastor in a small rural church. Great students, had a great meeting last night. I may talk about that. But, for our group, ours is very small, and so it's very discussion driven. So if I need to talk to somebody, I don't have anybody to say, hey, would you go talk to so-and-so about this? They have to police themselves. So I've had to be in a position where they police themselves. Now, I believe one thing that will help you as a youth pastor, especially if you're new, is you have to have a code of conduct. And ours is an unwritten code of conduct. And in fact, next week, I'm about to kind of share a little bit about that. And sometimes I have to bring it up because sometimes they forget, they're teenagers. And so I always want to reiterate things like, listen, we don't talk over people who are talking. We dial into what people are saying. We respect people when they're talking. And so we want to do that because we don't want anybody to miss the gospel, right? There's reasons behind this, not just Paul's law or Paul's rules. It's, a code of conduct that is going to protect the group, right? It's going to protect the group because if you don't have a code of conduct, if you look at any other team, if you look at football teams, baseball teams, sports teams, companies, whatever it is, you have to have a code of conduct in place, right? You have to have a system by which everybody agrees to the rules and everybody agrees this is the way we do things going forward. Because if we go by these things, then things tend to work out better. And when we don't go by these things go worse. And so everybody has to sacrifice their little bit of freedom for the sake of everybody else, right? Your freedom to talk when somebody else is talking, your freedom to get up and go do whatever you want, the freedom to just have a private conversation versus, listening to what's going on. So when we have these, well, how do you do that, Paul? Well, you start by asking, what are the things that we need to go through? What is the steps? And I want to talk to you a little bit about, I have a resource if you're interested, and it is called the Youth Pastor's Guide to Creating a Code of Conduct. I made this simply because there's so many youth pastors that either don't have this, don't know how to write one, don't know how to enforce it, don't know how to present it as a positive. And so that's the thing, is we have to be able to present these things both to parents and to students as a positive. Because if we're just going to let people run wild, guess what? First of all, that youth pastor, you're not going to be there very long. So don't unpack. If you're just going to let people do what they want because you believe in the freedom of just what everybody wants to do, what you have to do is you have to be able to come alongside. And I'll tell you a few things about this. Let me go ahead and I'm going to, like I said, I'll drop this in the chat here in just a minute. But some of the things that I think you have to do is the first thing you have to do is understand what is the goal of a code of conduct. That's the thing. Why do we need to have that? And the goal of the code of a code of conduct is not to keep bad kids out, but to keep all kids safe. Okay? The point of having a code of conduct is not to keep bad kids out or to separate out bad kids or to find a way to discipline bad kids, right? It's a way to keep the entire group safe. That's the point. And everybody has to buy into that. So that's the goal, right? We want to have a best group, we have a best practices, right, for our youth group that's backed by Scripture, that upholds the integrity of the group, so that everyone can, enjoy and learn about and practice their faith in God. That's the point of having a code of conduct. And, do you need a code? You have to ask yourself, do I need a code of conduct? Listen, sometimes we throw things out there. We enforce rules that are unneeded. Like if your youth group is well behaved, why are we making one? Right? I don't have, like I said, we have unwritten rules in our group. And I am always talking about these unwritten rules as to remind them. So I don't need stuff on the board. I don't need stuff on the wall, although those things are not bad. And in fact, in this document here, how to have a code of conduct, I have, ways of you being able to display this in positive ways to your group that is going to help, especially those students who says, look, I'm here for a good time, and I'm here to learn, and I'm here to connect with my friends. And then you always have those students who are maybe not there for those reasons. And so you have to create a code of conduct that's going to help everybody do it, those who are willing to buy in and those who are not willing to buy in. Well, what happens in sports? Well, guess what? If you're a troublemaker in the locker room, guess what? You get traded. And as much as we hate to lose students, you will lose more students who are there for the right reasons. And if you lose those students, then you have a whole nother group of students coming in that don't care about the structure, right? You may lose church kids who have been there their whole lives for the sake of students who come to be disruptive. Now, I've dealt with disruptive kids in every youth ministry I have, and I have taken it upon myself. First of all, I don't rely upon the code of conduct. I rely upon personal relationship. I don't point to the rule. I point to our relationship. In other words, so what I do is I have conversations with students who are disruptive and I say, hey, man, and I may not know them very well, but I try to pour into them, have that relationship with them so that I can speak into their life and be able to say, listen, man, I love you coming. I love you being a part. I love the energy you bring, but I need your help. I need your help here because listen, when it's time for this, man, we got to dial it down to like 0. Okay. I don't want you talking. I don't want you to think. So can you help me in this for the next, and then you once again, it's not one and done. It's a journey you take with a student until they either opt in or opt out. If they're not going to be, in on what's going on and they've chosen to opt out, then you have to then take another step. So you have to then say, well, what is this code of conduct going to do? Why do I need it? Well, because it's the same reason why if kids don't know what the code of what is expected of them, they get to make up their own rules, right? So having a code of conduct is important because everybody knows the standards. I like Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He says the standard is the standard. And you know what? The standard we should have in a youth group or a youth ministry, the standard is the standard. We buy into that because we believe that is the best way forward. It's the best way to keep everybody safe. It's the best way so that everybody can learn what they came to learn. It's the best way for everybody to encounter Jesus. And so in doing this, that's why we should have one. Now, who's in charge of creating this, right? Well, the youth pastor, the parents, the student, and your pastor. 4 groups. And that's not a committee as much as it is everybody have some input, but your pastor should have final say, right? You're taking this as a process. And then you have to come up with things like, well, what is your disciplinary process if someone breaks the code? If somebody breaks this code, well, how many chances do they get? And you have to, I was a day camp director for 2 years, and I had over 500 campers I had to take care of. So I would keep folders on certain kids because, well, I had to I would document things. Hey, I had a discussion with them this day. Hey, I had a discussion with them this day. They broke the rules this day. So after about, 3 times of doing that, then I'd make a phone call. And I'd call the parents and say, hey, listen, I've had some conversations with your son or daughter. Listen, can you help me out? Right? I want your child to come to camp here, but he or she is making it unmanageable. It's making it difficult for me to help him do that. So can you have a conversation with them? So, okay, now we have the parent conversation. We bring them in, they have the conversation, and then we go back to it. And in rare cases, that kid can't handle it. Usually a parent conversation, in that case, was sufficient. The minority of cases was, hey, listen, I just can't have you here, man. You're just off. You're off the reservation, as they say. You're way over here outside the box of what everybody else is doing. You're wanting to conduct and create your own rules, and we just can't have that here at the camp. It's not safe for you, and it's not safe for other campers for you to do the things you're doing. So when we're thinking about this, thinking it through, what I've done in this resource for you is I have put together not only the things that I'm talking about, the things I've already shared with you, but I'm talking about, I give you worksheets to actually work through it, right? How do I come up with a code of conduct? How do I do this? Well, this is a free resource, by the way. All you have to do is sign up for my newsletter. Sign up for my newsletter, and you can always unsubscribe if you don't want to be part of a newsletter, that's fine. But if you like the information that I give, whether it's through the video or through the podcast or through the blog or whatever it may be, and you appreciate my take on things, well, then stay a part of the newsletter, because you're going to get weekly articles, you're going to get videos, you're going to get free resources, you're going to get a lot of cool stuff 52 times a year, right? It's once a week. So you're going to hear from me once a week, and you can ask questions and get questions answered and all that kind of good stuff. So let me go ahead and drop this down. These will be down in the show notes, by the way, so you can get it later. It'll be downstairs there in the old downstairs. This is the upstairs, and then there's the downstairs. You got to take the stairs or take the elevator, better still, or the escalator, downstairs into the description part, and find your links there so you can sign up for things. But that is the code of conduct. It's how to put together a code of conduct. That's right there. And so if you have more questions about code of conduct or those kind of things, you are welcome to ask questions in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them if I can, right? So onward we go. We're going to go ahead and answer question number 2 today. And question number 2, by the way, if you're brand new here, go ahead and click that subscribe button, because you're going to get videos like this. This is Streamtember. I'm going live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11:30. But I put out videos once a week. I try to put out a video here once a week, or shorts, or whatever it may be. And so if you like my content, if you like information about being a better youth pastor, if you like leveling up, if you like the process that I go through, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit that thumbs up button. It tells me you like the video and you want more of them, right? So be sure to subscribe, and you will get content like this, okay? All right, so let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2, how do you keep your teaching fresh? Now, for me, once again, I've been teaching and preaching for 35 years in various contexts, whether it's camp, where I've worked at a camp for 4 years. I was a camp speaker for 20 years. I've taught in Christian schools. I have taught in my youth group. I have taught Sunday school. I've been at the church I'm at now for about 3.5 years, and I am the only adult person who deals with the youth most of the time. I teach Sunday school and I teach Wednesday. And so the question then becomes, how do you keep your teaching fresh? How do you keep to where kids don't tune you out, to where students quit listening? And I'm thankful. I'm grateful for the students I have, because they continue to come. Nobody forces them to come. We have probably half our group who does not necessarily come to our church on a weekly basis. They would say they come to church there, but it's kind of a split deal. But I, as a pastor and a preacher and a teacher, always want to keep my stuff fresh. I want to give you some ideas and thoughts on how to do that. I try to have guest speakers sometimes, right? So I don't want to be this monolith. I don't want to be this one voice that's all they hear all the time. So I try to have a guest speaker. I try to have a missionary come in. We have missionaries that come into our church sometimes. So on a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning, if they're there, I try to have them teach Sunday school. And it's just something different. Change the pace up. So they're not always hearing me. It gives me a break. So when you're preparing your teaching calendar and things like that, I think you need to, maybe not for the first year, although you may want to tinker with that. But build in times where you're going to switch it up with your kids. Not only are you going to switch it up, but you're going to switch it up to where maybe you're not the only person. If you have a group of adult volunteers, maybe they can take some of that, right? And that's, that's kind of the next step of that is when you're not, if you say, well, hey, I don't think I'm going to, maybe I'm not the best person to teach this, or maybe I just need a break. Ask one of your volunteers, give them the curriculum, give them the stuff they need, or ask them, what do you feel like you would like to teach on? And let them do, if they're not proven yet, give them an opportunity to speak, give them an opportunity to share. And then kind of work with them to see how they do, right? You just promise them one time, right? You're not promising them that they're going to do it all the time, but you're going to help them, right? You're going to say, hey, I need to change it up. Let's bring in a guest speaker. Let's let a volunteer speak. Let students share, maybe just have a testimony night where students are sharing stories about their faith or about how they're using their faith in school. It could be where you do video. Right now, I'm doing a video, a curriculum. I'm doing like every week, it's about a 10-minute video, and then there's some discussion. So I try to mix it up with them to where they are getting video teaching. They'll hear straight teaching from me. I'll use slides. I'll use object lessons. I'll use a lot of different things to where they can't nail me down necessarily say, well, Paul's going to do that all the time, right? Paul's going to do this all the time. They don't, I try to keep it fresh enough where they go, oh, well, this is different. This is something unusual. Something I started doing just this month is I started doing co-teaching. So I asked one week, I said, hey, who wants to co-teach with me next week? And I had a young lady volunteer. And this young lady isn't necessarily a part of our Sunday morning. She is sometimes, but she said, I'll help. I said, great. So I gave her the curriculum, the stuff that I'm working with, and then said, hey, how about, you doing this part? And then I'll show the video, and then I'll do this part. So we split it up, and she did a fantastic job, right? So another way you can, keep your teaching fresh, is not be the only voice in the room, is co-teach with your students, right? Make sure they have an understanding. Of course, make sure they have maybe some communication skills. They don't need to be perfect and they don't need to be you, but they, you know what I'm saying, right? They got to have some level of skill maybe in that. They're not going to just get up and, just talk about whatever. There's a plan in place, right, for that. I would also suggest, where there are youth-led nights, right, where it's students are all teaching together. Maybe there's a student teaching. Maybe there's multiples. Maybe there's 2 or 3 kids talking about one subject, and you give them each a verse about the same subject, and they share about that. There's also things like self-study. Maybe you just have a quiet night. What if you have said for 10 minutes, guys, this is our lesson tonight. For 10 minutes, we're going to be working through this journal, right? I want you to take and just do this section. I'm going to put on some worship music, take 10 minutes, worship, go through this section. We're going to have discussion afterwards, right? But no formal teaching necessarily, but a discussion type of format. So you could do something like that. You could also do no teaching, right? What if it's just a question of the day? What if it's a news story that you put up on the screen and say, hey guys, can we talk about this? Right? It doesn't have to always be you teaching in a certain way, doing a certain thing. And a lot of times for me, I don't want to get bored, right? I get bored of myself. If I start doing things over and over again that feel very familiar, but also feel very boring, I feel like I have to switch it up for my own sake, right? For my own sake, I have to do that. So I would also say too, there's something called edutainment. And I have a couple of resources that I think might help you. So I create things that are both educational and fun. It's going to teach the lesson, but it's also going to add some fun to it. So the first thing I would offer to you is this. I have a series that I call Crime Scenes from the Bible. And Crime Scenes from the Bible is just a fun way for students to learn something, right? So season 1 has 4 lessons. And the 4 lessons are Adam and Eve, Gideon, Samson, and Joseph. All of which there's a crime in there somewhere, a legit crime. right? A misdemeanor or felony, something like that, right? And then, so I dress up the room with police tape. I put out clues, like there are stations that you can go to. I give students a notebook where they can take notes, and then they're going to have to guess. Maybe they guess. Some of the students will have to guess what the story is. They don't know what the story is. Many students are just biblically illiterate, and they don't have any idea who Moses is. They have no idea who's Noah. They have no idea who any of these folks are. And so in doing something like crime scenes of the Bible, where you actually have these stations of these clues and crime scenes, you're interacting with them on a different level. You're interacting with them, talking about a Bible story in the sense of a crime scene. They're taking notes, looking for clues. And then at the end, some kids are going to know. They're going to know what this is. But the question is things like motive. Why was the crime committed, right? When you're looking at a crime scene, you go, why did this happen? How did it happen? And why did it happen? Who are the culprits here, right? Who are the suspects? Who did this thing? And so it becomes a fun way to be able to share that with students. And I'll show you, I have not only season 1, but I also have season 2. And season 2 has Cain and Abel. It has Daniel, Jezebel, and the devil. So there's 8 sessions. And I wouldn't necessarily do these back to back. These are fun ways to break up your teaching where it's super interactive. If you have the size group you can work with that, right? If you have a good youth group that can, if you have between 10 and 20 students, this is probably good because you can break them into 2 groups and they can each be working on a separate crime scene if you want. And then maybe they switch, right? So you could actually do this in 2 weeks if you wanted, or you could do it in the 4 weeks, however you choose to do it. And I will go ahead and drop a link. If you're interested in that, let me go ahead and drop the links there for season 1, season 2. That's 8 lessons, crime scenes from the Bible. And it is part of, like I said, keeping your teaching fresh, where, this is different. Like when I had students walk in on this, they had no idea. I didn't even tell them what we were doing. They were like, what is happening? Okay, what is happening here? And they're like, oh, this is a crime scene. Yeah, it's a crime scene. You had I had a red light going, like there was a police presence there. And they walk in and here's this crime scene. Yeah, and I even put down, a body chalk drawing on the if there was somebody who was murdered, if that was the crime that was committed, like in the case of Cain and Abel. There was a big rock there with blood on it. So, so there was fun moments that I've had with students that, that make the evening memorable, right? It makes it memorable. And so that's what I want to do. I want to educate them, and I want to offer a fun factor in it to where they remember this moment. And I'm thinking about writing a season 3, and it may have a lot to do with Easter. And we'll see about that. But that's, season 1 and 2, 8 lessons, pretty good stuff, I think. The other thing I would recommend is I do Bible escape rooms. And these Bible escape rooms are exactly what they are. Just like if you went to an escape room, somewhere and you had to figure out clues and whatever, and you had to unlock or to beat the timer or something like that. I would put out the first one I ever did was Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas in jail. And the students had to figure out how to unlock the jail cell. And part of that was they had to figure out that they had to sing a song, which was going to cause the earthquake that was going to open up the jail cell. And there was lots of clues in there because they had to, the jailer is in there, right? There's all these people in there that are NPCs, if you will, right? That partake in this. They have to read the story. They have to find the clues. Right? How does the gate open? How do they stop the jailer from killing himself? That's another portion. They have to figure that part out. What is being said? And there were things like they had to unscramble words. They had to put verses in order. They had to sing a song together. So there's a lot of fun elements to a escape room. That's great for a retreat. It's great for your youth meeting if you want to do it for one night. You could do it in an hour. I did mine in an hour. So you put the timer up. They kind of know what the timer is. And they're trying, and you can help them, give them a few clues, things like that. But all the clues, all the things you get in this little package here, and there's a video that goes with it that I believe I'm explaining it. So you're not like, I got to look at this and, it's like trying to put together an IKEA piece of furniture. No, I have the video, so I can tell you how this works. The other one I have is called Easter Escape Room, where it focuses on Easter, and all the elements of Easter are there. That you can go ahead and do an escape room where, how does Jesus get out of the tomb, right? That's the escape. You can call it an escape tomb, right? Oh, wait, you can call it an escape tomb. Thank you very much. So if you are looking for edutainment types resources where, hey, this is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to keep my teaching fresh, which is, once again, all these elements that I've shared with you is to keep your teaching fresh. So you can kind of like present something in a different way so your kids don't get used to it. It's almost like when you exercise, they talk about muscle confusion, where you're not always doing the same exercises every day. You're doing this part, and you're doing this for 5 minutes, you're doing that for 10 minutes, and you're doing these things so that your muscles don't necessarily get used to the same thing over and over again. You're exercising different muscles, different ways, different exercise machines, those kind of things. And so I'm going to put the links to these down in the resource as well. So here I'm going to put the escape room, Paul and Silas, right here. I'll put that in there, so you can check that out. And once again, if you're joining me live, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part. Some of you, I notice, have popped in, popped out. Perfectly okay. It's lunchtime for a lot of people, and so you got to be places and do things. Maybe you can come back later, watch the whole thing. That would be awesome. I think you would find great benefit in it. And we've already talked about creating a code of conduct, those type of things. So I think you can go backwards and say, hey, I need that. That's like important to me, Paul. I kind of need a code of conduct. Well, I can help you with that. All right, so we're going to jump into the third question of the day. And this is, how do you work in a church? And there are people who are going to be brand new. Now, you have gone to church your whole life. And then you say, well, I'm going to become a youth pastor. Well, going to church and working at a church are two different things. Okay. I was an idealistic young man, and I had a certain idea of what church was going to be like. And because of that, because I thought I had various idealistic ideas. This youth ministry wants to grow, and everybody wants the youth ministry to grow. Everybody wants to help me. Everybody's going to like me. We're the church. We just love people. We care for people. We do all these things. And boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. And one of the reasons I was wrong about my attitude towards the church is I didn't look at the church as a system. It's a body, and that is the image that comes to mind, that we are the body of Christ. The issue is also the thing I did not know when I was younger, when I started when I was 22 years old, is that the church is also a system. And when you're working in a system, the system always wins. You didn't know that, did you? Maybe you did. But the system, I thought too, I could change the system. No, you can't change this. There's no way, shape, or form I changed the system. I did not know my role in some way. I knew my job. I don't think I knew my role. And because of that, I just kind of was doing all kinds of stuff, right? Because I thought, I had this idealism. I thought it was going to, and boy, when I crashed hard. And that's where the disillusionment came in. That's where I started to rethink a lot of things. Now, I've worked in several churches. Some of them worked out. Some of them did not. Some of them, I understood the system. Some of them I did not. In fact, the ones that I was let go, and I was let go from a couple of churches because I wasn't the right fit, which in reality, you could say, Paul doesn't understand the system. I didn't understand the culture. or the system. And I didn't know how to work the system. And I didn't know how, and I probably was a bit too anti-system, if you will, right? I was anti-establishment in a lot of ways. And because I just thought my thoughts mattered more than others. Clearly not the case, especially in the churches that let me go. No ill will towards them. It was what it was. I was younger then, super idealistic, had my own thoughts and ideas. It's part of the process, I think, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't learn earlier that you are in a system. You're not just in a body, you're in a system. It's both, right? It's both. So some of the things, and I'll tell you that some of the things you have to know. Here's the first thing I would tell you. First of all, assume that your church is dysfunctional. If you go to work in a church, assume above all things that it's dysfunctional. And here's why. Because if you go in believing that the church, there's the church people see on Sundays, Wednesdays, there's the public-facing church, and then there's the behind-the-scenes church. And that is where a lot of the dysfunction can lie. And what you have to get used to is the fact is, look, if people are working at this church, if we're not talking about just the building, we're like the people. If there are people in this church, it's dysfunctional. So just go ahead and bank on the church being dysfunctional. Something is dysfunctional. Something is not happening the way it's supposed to be for whatever reason. Whether that's leadership, whether that's some believer in the body that's causing a problem, whether that's you have volunteers that are not doing their job. Just go ahead and say that there is some type of dysfunction that is not your fault. You don't want to be the dysfunction, by the way. Okay? How do you work in a church? Don't be the dysfunction, right? If you're a newscaster, you never want to be the news. You don't want your colleagues having to report on you that you've done something stupid. So the same way, you don't want to be a newscaster and then become the news. You don't want to be the youth pastor and become the dysfunction. You don't want to become the person that people are talking about in staff meeting. You don't want to be that person. You want to be the person that's the team player. You know the system. You know how things are going. You are willing to say, you know what, I'm going to work alongside of this system. So just assume that the system is dysfunctional, not broken per se. It can be dysfunctional and yet not broken. Things can get accomplished, but that dysfunction is that it's just not functioning properly. It's functioning, but there's a problem with things are getting held up. And unfortunately, sometimes I became the dysfunction, right? So they have to the system spits out the problem, right? If you're choking on a piece of food, right? You're not going in for surgery. No, you're going to get that one piece of chip that's stuck in your throat. And sometimes you have to Heimlich that chip out of there. And what the church does and what organizations do and what systems do a lot of times is they get rid of the thing that is lodged in the throat so that it can go back to breathing again. So the system can go on. So you don't want to be the chip in the throat. Okay, you want to be the one that says, okay, get it, check, I got it. Here's how the system works. That doesn't mean you have to be a conformist. That just means you understand how the system works. That means you're going to do your job to the best of the ability to keep the system doing what it's supposed to be doing, and as a believer, you keep the body functioning as the body is supposed to be functioning. But there is also a system, right? You have to recognize that. And so in knowing this, you have to be able to, and I go into detail, by the way, because I have a resource. By the way, did you notice that I have a resource for everything? And do you know why I have a resource for everything? Because I have done it. I have been there. I have done that. I have t-shirts. I have the whole thing. Okay. And so I write these because youth pastors have to understand things. New youth pastors have to understand things. They have to get rid of the idealism and understand that they're working in a body that is also a system. And so I would encourage you that if you're interested in that, I've just put a link in the chat and I'll show you here what it is. It's called the New Youth Pastor's Guide to Getting Things Done. Once again, sign up for my newsletter. Just sign up for my newsletter. You can get this. It's like 12 to 15 pages, maybe more, with everything that I'm talking about. Plus, it has worksheets for you to do some self-examination to understand what the system is. Where am I failing? Why am I struggling? Right? Why am I struggling against the system? What is it about me? Once again, the system is not going to change. We are the ones who have to change. It doesn't matter. You can go work anywhere. Every job is a system. And probably very few times, if any, does the job change because you tell it to change. The system always wins. You can go and flip burgers at McDonald's and tell McDonald's how you're going to do it. No, you're not. They're going to tell you how these things work. And you're not going to come up with some new and inventive idea. You might. But chances are that manager's going to say, no, that's the way we do things this way. You can always tweak. You can always find better ways to do something, but you're not going to come up with new ideas wholesale that are necessarily going to be implemented. And it's the same thing in the church. You may have some good ideas, but how those ideas get in front of people, how those ideas come to fruition, well, that's a different story. There's ways of doing that, and I've accomplished that in some cases, and in many cases I did not because I didn't understand the system. And in the guide, here's what I share with you. I'll give you just a quick example. We are designers. So if you look at designers and engineers, designers are creatives. They design things. They say, this would look great. This is a great idea. We should do this. And then they have to bring it to an engineer. And the engineer then says, well, we have to build this. And that's going to cost too much money. And that's going to be unsafe. And that's not going to fit the area in which we are building in. So there's a struggle between designers and engineers. Engineers think one way, designers think another way. That doesn't mean that engineers and designers can't work together, but the designer has to know what the engineer wants and can do versus a designer just coming in and saying, no, this is the idea. I'm not retooling it. I'm not redrawing it. That's the design. That's it. You're not going to get very far as a designer. And you know what? You're not going to get very far as a youth pastor or far in ministry until you understand the system you're working in and the engineers that are around you that make things happen that are going to happen. So if you are interested in that, there's a link in the chat, but there's also a link down in the description. So I think that is it for today, everybody. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Thanks for being a part today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Once again, leave some comments down below. If any of these topics or questions that I've covered are of interest to you, ask your questions. Leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And that way you'll get this kind of information on a weekly basis. The next time I'm going live, by the way, I'm going live on next Tuesday, 11:30, and I'll answer some more youth ministry questions. And if you leave your question down below, I'll answer your question as well. But that is it for today, all. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being a part, and I will catch you guys next Tuesday. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.